I've got an amazing guest today coming up on Breaking Digital Podcast. Daniel Priestley, who is London-based and runs a couple of companies, Dent Global, as well as Key Person of Influence. And we go into details of entrepreneurship, just some fascinating stuff of how we can become better entrepreneurs, what it takes, how to explore that, how we actually build, like and trust and know more people, and how we actually translate that into the online space. Shortcuts, Daniel's not too big on those, but that's okay because we're not seeing too many laptop millionaires on the beach right now, and you might just want to take a few pictures if you do see some. Anyway, we had a good laugh about that. And finally, we talk about zero moment of truth and this incredible marketing philosophy that actually helps understand how to connect with people in the digital space. So some really brilliant stuff coming up very quickly with Daniel Priestley.
Overwhelmed with online or just wanting to learn more about how you can build a successful business amidst all of the self-appointed gurus, big buzzwords and empty promises? The Breaking Digital Podcast by Doyle Bueller tells you exactly what smart entrepreneurs need to know to escape the clutter, get clear of the confusion, and pass the bullshit of building and growing a successful business online. It's about digital leadership and delivering the best value for your business online to your audience. Now, here's your host and author of the book on digital leadership and online marketing, The Digital Delusion, Doyle Bueller.
So today I'm with Daniel Priestley from Dent Global. Welcome, Daniel.
Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, no, really appreciate it. You're obviously, like we said, a very busy guy. Tell me a bit about yourself, Daniel.
My background is as an entrepreneur. I launched my first business in my teens and my first company at 21 and built it into a multi-million pound national business in Australia by the age of 25. So we actually generated over $10 million worth of sales when I was 25. So it was one of those really fast growth, right time, right place, right level of youth, energy, and testosterone in the early days. And then later on, I moved to the UK. I set up a business here and evolved that into a business accelerator. We now run a global business accelerator working with about 2,500 companies in Australia, Singapore, UK, and the USA. We have about 45 full-time employees around the world, basically working to help them to go through, the various stages of growth. So, getting past that one-person business into that small lifestyle boutique, then going through the scaling up phase and becoming a performance business that has some value. So we take people through that journey. Along the way, I've written 3 books: Key Person of Influence, Entrepreneur Revolution, and Oversubscribed, as you may have mentioned.
Yeah, no, fascinating story. So what exactly is it about an accelerator that kind of helps businesses out?
I'm a big believer in the idea that environment dictates performance. So we look at highly successful people and we often think that they must have some special DNA or special gene, that they've got the success gene. And actually, when you look a little deeper, you discover that most successful people are in a environment that supports getting stuff done. I became very fascinated with these high performance environments when I saw Silicon Valley tech accelerators producing really successful, fast growth companies. And I identified 4 key elements that make an environment a high performance environment. And that is access to best practices. So, removing the need for trial and error and just knowing what works and being able to get straight onto best practice. Access to a peer group that help to normalize the results that you want and who create an ongoing conversation that solves a lot of problems. Access to accountability structures, so having external accountability and external feedback. From people who are not too close and who aren't getting caught up in the noise or the story. And access to resources. So when you combine those 4 elements of best practices, peer group, accountability, and resources, you end up with an environment that really supports success to happen. So the entrepreneur journey is typically lonely, and most entrepreneurs find that they have to mute a lot of what they say, to their spouse or to their family or to their employees, they have to tone it down a bit. You often feel they're not well understood by their high school friends. So their environment actually is an environment that is often lonely, and it lacks the vibrancy and the energy and the buzz that they're craving or that they want. So we just lean in and create that for them. We create an environment where people can maximize the value that they're on.
It sounds like you have like a psychological profile for entrepreneurs.
Well, I've interviewed something like 4,000 or 5,000 of them, so I know the journey. I know the animal pretty well.
Yeah, yeah. And so are you saying that they're a little bit odd or just a little bit different?
Entrepreneurs, I mean, obviously they're a bit different in the sense that they're choosing to do something that's difficult. They're often they're turning their back on certainty and security of a job and going out and starting something that's on their own terms. So that makes them a bit different to start with.
But why do you think that they
sometimes
sort of risk that or sort of feel that that's not a risk or maybe it is a risk, but why do you think that's the case?
I think there's a number of reasons why people do. I think that most people get dissatisfied with something that they've seen that's not working the way it should. They try to impact the environment they're in, or they impact the organization they're currently working with, or they try and explore a few different ways to create some change, and then they realize that actually nothing's going to change unless they go and change. So I think behind every business startup, every entrepreneur is an experience of some sort of pain. There was some pain of either sharing an idea and getting rejected, or seeing a problem in the world that needed solving and no one was taking it seriously and solving it. So there's often those painful moments. Sometimes there's the moments of opportunity. There's that light bulb moment of, wow, actually, there's a lot of people who want this solved, and I know how to solve it.
Yeah, no, brilliant. And do you find that there's a difference between sort of the mentality of entrepreneur versus sort of small business owner? Are they one and the same? Are they different? Do they handle risk and opportunity differently?
I think there's an entrepreneurial mindset, which is this mindset that anything's possible, that resources can flow freely, that things can be done, that teams can form. And that's actually a very high level part of the brain, which is that kind of frontal cortex part of the brain, which is very big picture, very strategic, really powerful part of the brain. However, what actually happens is that there's a more powerful part of the brain, which is very much the functional monkey mammalian part of the brain that is all about just doing functional tasks. And this part of the brain has a lot more horsepower than the frontal cortex. So what tends to happen is the typical scenario is that the entrepreneur or the person goes away on a holiday, somehow gets a little bit of distance from their usual day-to-day life, and they have this big idea and they really see that lots of people could be served and helped, and then over time they get into the actual functional work of doing that, and they lose that entrepreneurial spark. They lose that big picture. They lose the resourceful attitude that kind of kicked off the business. They just get caught up doing the work. So I think the small business owner is really the entrepreneur who gets a little bit too close to the problem and a little bit too close to the actual work. And the person that you would say call entrepreneurial is someone who's been able to maintain that distance or that perspective, or keep themselves in that big picture mindset.
Interesting. And so just to sort of relay that to what we were talking about before, and the programs you run, sort of, are you helping the entrepreneurs that are kind of stuck or kind of want to bridge that gap? How do you actually get them to that accelerated stage that you're talking about?
The typical person we work with is they've been in their industry for 10 to 15 years plus. They know their industry well. They know their craft. They're really damn good at what they do. They can solve all sorts of problems. They get frustrated seeing, some of the upstart businesses that are, out there taking off, when they know that they actually know more than those people, those companies. So we work with people who genuinely have all the raw materials to become a key person of influence in their industry, but who probably have been focused on the functional stuff more so than the entrepreneurial stuff. So we create an environment that kind of reconnects them with that entrepreneurial vibe, that entrepreneurial energy, and gets them thinking a little bit differently about themselves and about their business and about their industry. But what we're not doing is we're not trying to turn a corporate accountant into a yoga instructor or vice versa. We're not trying to turn someone into something they're not. We're not trying to help people to identify some cool, sexy opportunity that they've never really thought about before. We're really big on the idea that people should double down on their industry, double down on their skill set, double down on their brand and their reputation, and make the most of who they already are and what they already know. But rather than doubling down on the functionality, they should double down on the vitality, the stuff that makes them irreplaceable and different and interesting.
So what about personal branding then? How does that sort of parlay into this as well?
Well, if you imagine that there's two axes, which is on the y-axis, you've got, say, the quality of insights and the depth of knowledge and understanding about your industry and about your client and your customer and your problem and your product. And then on the other axis, you've got the number of people who know about who you are and what you can do and what you can solve and those insights that you have. So if you know a lot, but not many people know that you end up as an employee or a consultant working with a very small number of people or companies or small number of projects, and really kind of fighting the battle to be known, liked, and trusted by enough people to make a business. If you're known by a lot of people, but you don't have very deep insights, you get seen as a flake or a celebrity or a Kardashian kind of figure.
And you're saying something's wrong with the Kardashian figure?
Well, objectively, probably that will not be a tweetable quote.
Okay.
Daniel Priestley says Kardashian's figure is not right.
Unquote.
Unquote. So you end up in that sort of like pointless celebrity kind of space. So the real holy grail is to have deep insights, to know a lot about your topic, but also have a lot of people who know that you know that, so that you're known for having a solid opinion on things, and then that puts you into the space of being a key person of influence, a thought leader, one of those people who's kind of like the go-to people. And the beauty of that is then you start attracting work. So the real flip happens when your stress is not about how do you find work and how do you get people to value you. Your stress is like, how do I keep up with all the work and how do I manage all these really phenomenal projects that people want me to work on and want to pay me top rate for. But then the stress, I'm not saying that being a key person of influence isn't stressful, but it's a different kind of stress.
No, definitely. But you talked about sort of passion and doubling down on basically what you're really, really good at and not becoming sort of a yogi instructor or yoga instructor rather. How do you kind of sort of manage that? It's like, well, maybe my passion is this, and do I just kind of leave everything, or you kind of don't deal with those cases at all?
What frustrates me is that there are so many people out there just looking at random new things as though it's a great idea. They sort of, their whole background has nothing to do with, there's nothing in their background around property, and yet they're now saying that they're going to get into the property industry and they're going to become a property developer or a property person. There's nothing in their background around stock market trading, and they're talking about being a stock market trader. Or there's nothing in their industry about healthcare, and now they've identified that the baby boomers are all retiring, so we're going to have to get into healthcare and aged care homes, and everyone who knows them is sitting there going, what on earth do you know about that industry, or what on earth, like why are you doing that? And then not only that, people say, well, why are you doing that when actually you know a lot about the thing that you're actually good at? And then the typical response is, oh, but no one makes money in my industry. And I say, well, if you were a bit closer to the property industry, you'd discover that a lot of people in the property industry say the same. A lot of people in the stock market industry say the same. A lot of people in the healthcare industry say the same. You just think it's different because from outside of the industry, all you can see is the people who are making money.
Yeah, and so you kind of get stuck there. But that goes without saying. Like, how do you it probably comes from sort of the talk of, well, make six figures or seven figures type thing, and everybody's sort of looking for the wrong thing without actually analyzing what it is that's sort of important to them. Do you agree?
Yeah, they're looking at. I mean, they're also just a lot of those things are they're sold and they're communicated in a way that stimulates the monkey brain. So when a guy comes on a YouTube video and he says, "Let me show you my Porsche, my Lamborghini, my jet, my massive house, and my bevy of beauties who are hanging out by my pool." Chemically and biologically, what happens in the brain is that the rational, logical, intelligent part of the brain shuts down, and the purely emotional, reactive part of the brain fires off. So, all you have to really do is talk to people about passive income, multiple streams of passive income, quick wins, earning money online while you travel. All you have to do is trigger those kind of archetypes, and then people will just lose their mind and really get into it. And when you sit in my shoes, where you actually see thousands of people chasing this stuff, and you realize that it just doesn't produce a result, and that actually the person who is making the money out of it is making the money out of it because they've positioned themselves as the key person of influence in that space. Then you realize, oh, wait a second. The real answer is not to do what they're doing, is not to do what they're saying or what they're talking about. It's actually to do what they're doing, which is to write books, produce videos, create articles, position yourself as a key person of influence. It's something that you've got a great story about. It's really to look at what these people all do, and then do what they do, but not necessarily what they say.
Yeah, no, for sure. And so, just for the record, then, Daniel, you don't have any like videos of you rapping or wearing some bling at all, or?
I have those videos,
Oh, do
but
you?
fortunately, I grew up at the exact amount of time where my teenage years were on analog, and only after I grew up a little bit, digital came along.
Yeah.
I am so grateful that my teenage years are out on analog. So somewhere in my parents' house, some photos of me wearing my homeboy outfits and my basketball phase and all the different phases I went through.
Yeah.
But the beauty is that it's not online. I'm so grateful for that.
Well, that's
The
too
poor
bad.
kids these days, all the dumb stuff they're going to do in their teenage years is going to haunt them for the rest of their life.
Yeah. Well, I could picture you with a bandana on your forehead too, and some silver chains coming down as well.
Yeah, you got it. That's exactly the image. That's I went through that phase. I'm not going to deny it.
So
Luckily, the photos won't ever see the light of day.
Yeah, well, okay. You'll have to hide them. Before I get into the digital side, like, do you see that there's sort of like you mentioned, the monkey brain and that sort of thing? If you take the sort of logical next step that, hey, if we evolved, as a sort of a relative to monkeys, are we going to get past that point where everything is drama based and everything is, shiny object syndrome and that sort of thing, to be able to say, hey, let's look at this more logically. Let's look at this, for an overall benefit for everybody, kind of thing.
Do you mean as a society or as individuals?
As individuals, as entrepreneurs, or is that sort of the gist?
Yeah, I think every entrepreneur goes through the phase where they try all that stuff and then they realize that it doesn't work, and then they realize that actually you got to just stop watching the news. You got to stop watching these silly videos and Instagram accounts, and just get on with being awesome at what you do, and double down on your craft and become the best at what you do, and really take an opinion on things and try stuff, fail at stuff, and improve stuff, but actually pick a path and go with it.
Yeah.
And to the degree that you can tune out from all the noise is the degree that you already have the inbuilt software to be the best entrepreneur. The software and the hardware for you being an awesome entrepreneur, a very successful entrepreneur, is already inbuilt. It's already installed. It's just that you're running all these other programs that are basically crashing the good stuff. So, so provided you don't trigger the monkey and the reptile brain, you actually do have great hardware and great software built in.
So no more Kim Kardashian then.
Just limit it to one or 2 days a week.
Okay. All right. It seems like you're sort of I love the concepts that you're sort of putting out there. And you seem to be sort of translating across online and offline and that sort of thing. And so what do you feel is sort of the biggest benefit of taking what you're learning, what you're teaching people in terms of focusing and leadership and that sort of thing, and bringing it into the digital space?
Well, the digital space is the landscape that all of this is possible, because of that landscape. If we went back not that long ago, maybe 20 or 30 years, becoming a thought leader and becoming a key person of influence really wasn't a possibility for most people. So it wasn't that long ago that if you wanted to put a book into the marketplace, you had to get greenlit from a professional publishing house who were going to fund it, distribute it, and realistically, publishing houses are only interested in publishing books that are mass market. So they're not interested in publishing some sort of niche little topic. They want to publish stuff that is cookbooks and vampire books and wizard books and all of that kind of stuff. They're not at all, weight loss books. They're not interested in doing some sort of book on digital transformation or on how to build an organizational culture. Those were the absolute niche fringe books. But today we live in a world where if that's your passion, you can blog about it, you can make videos about it, you can write a book about it, stick it on Amazon. You can open an e-commerce business. You can consult. You can consult over Skype. You can have clients all over the world that you've never physically been in the same room as. All of that's made possible by digital. So that's the times that we live in. These awesome digital times where no one's having to green light your project and where micro niche is becoming incredibly viable. Because you're not fishing in a pond that's 5 mile radius from your office. The whole world is your oyster. One of our clients here in London, she wrote a book called Worl, and it's all about how to fire someone so they thank you. Mm-hmm. And it really just tackles that tiny little issue of how to have that difficult conversation of firing someone. And she's got clients all over Europe and all over the world, and people are getting her to speak at conferences, and it's driving business. And the whole opening conversation is this conversation around how do you fire someone in a really respectful way, and that's an example of just a little micro niche that probably wouldn't have existed without the digital landscape that we live in.
So that's because we've sort of become the masters of our domain type thing, and we can kind of get that content out there.
You can get the content out there. You can find people no matter where they are in the world. They can find you no matter where you are in the world. And this other thing about, going back into the idea of the brain and how the brain works. So the brain has a system in it that allows it to know who it knows, likes, and trusts. And in order to know, like, and trust someone, it needs to have spent time with them. It needs to have interacted with them, and it actually needs to have seen them in different locations. And if you have a combination of time, interactions, and locations, then the brain says, yeah, I know this person. So pre-digital, if you wanted to know lots of people, you actually had to go out and meet lots of people. So if you wanted to trigger the know, like, and trust button in people's brains, you had to go and meet them for coffee, have lunch with them, go to networking functions, host events. So really, that was how you became known, liked, and trusted to a lot of people. And the only people who did it a different way were celebrities who were in movies, television, and being beamed into people's houses on the 4 to 10 channels that were available. So so it was really, you either did it analog or you were a celebrity on TV or in the movies or on the radio. And then because of digital, once again, no one has to green light these blogs, articles, podcasts, videos, all of that sort of stuff. So now we have this situation where if you upload enough content, then you actually start reaching people. You become known, liked, and trusted to them, and it's happened through digital. So I get these strange emails of people who write to me saying, they really write to me talking about their whole life and very personal issues because they feel that they know me so well. And for me, receiving the email, I go, oh, this is a bit,
It's a bit
forward
awkward,
and a bit, it's a bit awkward, a bit personal. But then I remind myself that actually my content has triggered the known, liked, and trusted button in their brain. So for them, because they've watched videos, read books, read articles, listened to podcasts, for that person, they're sitting there saying, I know this person, like this person, trust this person. So therefore, for them, they're confiding in a confidant. For me, I don't know, like, and trust them because I put the content out there, but I didn't, get to know them back. So it's my first interaction feels a little bit forward because my brain hasn't triggered the known, liked, and trusted button for them. So, the other thing that digital allows for is this mass creation of relationships. It's this turbo engine for being able to build relationships with people all over the world, and have people know you, like you, and trust you, in cities and countries that you've never even been to.
Right. No, for sure. But do you think that perhaps with everybody being able to have access to all these tools, that there's a lot of, for lack of a better term, crap out there that people just kind of flooding the universe, flooding the internet with stuff that really has no value, or they believe it does, and obviously it's a relative term, but how do you control that?
Well, you can't control it. You can only put your own stuff out there and just and hope that you become signal rather than noise for a few people.
Is there a way of looking at it, though, for creating that signal as opposed to the noise?
It's consistency. So people need to see that you consistently just show up and that what you're talking about is relevant and it solves real problems. So people tune into stuff that helps them solve problems in a very real way. People want to hear different perspectives. So, taking a counterintuitive view to the status quo is a great idea, or challenging the status quo, but also just being consistent. The thing that, and this is one of the reasons I talk about people going off and doing some random thing that they're no good at. When someone does that, when someone says, oh, all my life I've wanted to be a yoga instructor, so I'm quitting my accounting job to be a yoga instructor and I'm going to start doing videos and podcasts about it. What they don't realize is that to the yoga community, they basically showed up as a newbie talking about concepts that are not unique or different or interesting in that community. And therefore, they've just become part of the noise very rapidly. And they're seen as a newbie as opposed to a key person of influence. So, they might be putting stuff out there, but they're just part of the noise and no one tunes into it. And then the opposite is that, someone who consistently shows up for 5 years, always, sharing great content, always taking a unique point of view, always challenging the status quo, always adding a level of depth and insight that few people, go to, that's the kind of person who people are going to tune into. And the cool thing about the times we live in is you don't need lots of people to tune in. If you became famous to a couple of thousand people, if you became known, liked, and trusted to a couple of thousand people, you'd have a very substantial lifestyle business. If you were smart about it, if you become well known, liked, and trusted to 10,000 people, you're in the realms of having, quite a successful global business. So you don't have to become famous to everyone. You can be noise to quite a lot of people. But if you've got your 1,000 to 10,000 true fans, you're going to be able to run a great business. And for those people, they're going to find you very, the beacon who stands out of the noise.
So that would sort of be how you need to niche in terms of your market and what you're delivering as well.
Yeah, and also just not worrying too much about what other people are saying, because in any industry there's people who are at a different level of mindset, different level of consciousness. So, like for example, take my what I talk about, entrepreneurship. There's a lot of people out there who are really just banging on about how entrepreneurship is the answer to everything, and it's going to make you really really happy, and it's just an easy journey to get started in, and it's just all good and all roses. There's no struggle or hardship, and it's passive income, and it's multiple streams of income. And I get out there and I say there's no such thing as passive income. There's no such thing as multiple streams of income. I've got a completely different take on all of those topics. It's hard, it's difficult, it's struggle. There's a small number of people who are highly successful, and we need to model those strategies. But don't kid yourself, entrepreneurship is a really damn hard journey. And what's funny is that, there's plenty of people who are tuning into the laptop millionaire, laptop lifestyle, sit on a beach earning tens of thousands a day.
What, you mean that doesn't work? That doesn't work, Daniel?
Well, I've been to the beaches, and there's not a lot of people down there with laptops. You'd think by this stage the beaches would be overrun with laptop millionaires.
Yeah, really. Oh my God, that's like an amazing visual. It's like, hey, wait a sec, where's everybody with their laptops making the $1 million?
Exactly. The laptop millionaires with their Dom Perignon.
Yeah.
So what's interesting is that there's room for everyone. There are people who, what they need to hear in their entrepreneur journey is they need to hear that that highly motivational, just get started and it'll all you'll be flying in your private jet real soon. And then there are people who they've been on the journey, and what they need to hear is a bit of validation that it actually is hard, and that they've been working away. They're not an idiot. Entrepreneurship is hard, and that they're probably closer than they think to getting a breakthrough. But they have to do things, a little bit of a different way, and there's a little bit more depth to it than they originally thought. So there's plenty of room for both communities to exist, and it's more not whether one is right or wrong, but more where people are at on their journey.
So what's the shortcut then, Daniel?
The shortcut is to be absolutely phenomenally awesome at what you do. That's the shortcut.
Oh, yeah. So it's going to be a long game, right?
Yeah, the shortcut is brilliance.
Yeah.
That if you're truly great, if you're truly brilliant, and I'll tell you the other shortcut. The shortcut is caring, like actually giving a shit. So few people actually are in their industry because they care, and I mean really care, and I mean care as in lose sleep about how much they care about what they do, and really if you want the real shortcut for business, it's just care deeply about your industry and what you do and your brand and your reputation and your client and the problems that you can solve. And from that space of caring, a lot gets solved. And if you can care deeply and deliver greatly, then that's as quickly as I could sum up the shortcut.
Yeah.
There are some pretty good shortcuts though, that are great shortcuts in today's world. Number one is writing a book. Having a book on Amazon, having a book out there says a lot about you. It says that you care, and it forces you to think more deeply about your industry than most people do. It allows you to communicate with a greater number of people and build relationships with a greater number of people. It typically gets you speaking at conferences or featured on radio or podcasts, and it gives you a depth of intellectual property that you can now leverage in a lot of different formats. So writing a book is definitely a shortcut. In becoming that type of person who's doing well. Creating video is definitely a shortcut for the same sort of reasons, and I would definitely talk about that. Blogging is a shortcut for the same sort of reasons, and creating productized services and productized solutions is a shortcut for the same sort of reasons. And then there's the really ugly one that people don't want to talk about and people want to pretend doesn't exist, and that's getting good at sales. So most businesses that I've interviewed, they really fail not because they don't have people interested. A lot of these businesses that are failing, they got so many warm contacts and so many people who like the owner and so many people who, they really, a lot of people are really wanting that business to succeed. But I see so many business owners who just totally lean out from the sales process. They have a complete unwillingness to confront sales. And here's my view on sales. My view on sales is that if someone already highly valued what you did and was proactive around solving that and proactive around spending money solving it, then they would have already solved it and they would have already spent the money. So by virtue of the fact that they've not already solved the problem that you can solve for them, means that they actually don't have it high on their values to solve the problem, or they certainly don't have it high on their values to solve it the way you solve it or the process that you offer, because they would have already done it if it was high on their values. So what has to happen in order to make a sale is that you absolutely have to communicate the problem, the monetary value of the problem, the cost of leaving the problem unsolved, and then really share how solving the problem can be faster, cheaper, and more powerful than they think, and that you're really ultimately the best choice for solving the problem. So having a powerful sales conversation is also a hack. It's also a fast track or a shortcut to business success. When I look at businesses that succeed, with very few exceptions, there's obviously a few exceptions like Facebook and those kind of like genius technology people who have coded up something that's truly innovative, and they get traction without having to do the unicorns. They get traction without having to do a lot of sales. There's certainly some examples that don't resonate with that, but by and large, when I see successful businesses that don't have a founder with 150 IQ who can code like a boss, then typically they're good at sales. So I see people who are good at confronting the sales process. Doesn't mean they like it, doesn't mean it's their favorite thing in the business to do, but they confront it.
Yeah, and that's the main thing, is that most of us are, well, not most of us, but a lot of us are scared of that sales conversation, and it's probably because we haven't really articulated that value and it created that congruency.
A lot of entrepreneurs, they have a secret desire that they will be seen as valuable, and that just by showing up with capability in the marketplace is enough for people to say, God, that's so valuable, that's so good, I really want that problem solved and I want to spend the money to solve it. So imagine like an image consultant, and I'm using an example because it was a question that was raised on forum recently that I was talking on. An image consultant, that they know that if they do an image consultancy with someone, that person will be more trusted, they'll earn more money, they'll be taken more seriously, they'll attract more high value clients. All of those positive things will happen as a result of image consulting. And they see people, they walk into a networking function, they see people who are dressed poorly and they don't even realize it, that are communicating the wrong things about themselves just in the way that they visually, they're aesthetic. And the image consultant says, well, what I want to be able to do is just give them my business card and tell them that I'm an image consultant that can help them to become, taken more seriously and more highly valued and highly paid through the way they show up. And I just want them to say, yeah, okay, cool, I'll spend £1,000 and get that done. But the reality of that is that if that person already was even close to seeing that as valuable and wanting to do that, then the person who they think is a good customer, they would have already been dressed better. They would have already been down at, Hugo Boss and decking their wardrobe out, in this style, and they would have already spent the money on an image consultant. They would have already been reading the fashion blogs and the fashion magazines, because already they get it. And by virtue of the fact that they need the service, tells you that they don't get it, which means that you're going to have to take the time to, you're going to have to they don't get it, they don't value it, which means you're going to have to sit down, you're going to have a conversation with them, and you have to communicate in their language and in their values and have them get it. And if you're in a situation where, you're just hoping that people see your value, you're actually missing the point that if someone needs your service, they don't get it. They don't see the value. So you have to have a sales conversation.
Yeah, no, for sure. They almost seem that's like a hands-off approach kind of thing. It's like, well, what I offer sells itself, but in the end, it doesn't.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm going to be really controversial here. Okay, I've never actually talked about this before, but I see a lot of women in business, in particular, who really hate the sales process. Because if you think about a very feminine approach to, say, dating, the feminine approach to dating is to spend a lot of time getting ready, look really gorgeous, do the hair, do the makeup, do the dress, and go out to the bar and stand at the bar and hopefully the right person notices you and comes up and says hello. And that's kind of that feminine attraction model of kind of like, people come up and then you either engage with them or you don't. And unfortunately, in business, a lot of it you have to be the person who walks up to the person at the bar. You have to be you have to be on the other side. You have to be the person who says, "Hey, I really think I could, help your business. I really think I could help your, I really think what I do could solve a problem for you. Let me sit down and let me talk to you. Let me buy you a coffee and talk you through my solution." So you have to be the one doing the selling. So it's an interesting one. When I work with a lot of female entrepreneurs, that mindset shift of being the attractive person who gets approached versus being the one who has to go out and
do the approach.
And do the approach. I don't know. Is that controversial? Have I crossed the line?
No, not at all. It's an interesting concept, and sort of it puts different perspective on what's important in sales and selling, and that, as you said, you still have to sort of create that value, that remarkable value that people can understand and relate to.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, no, cool. We've obviously talked a lot about quite a few things, and I just kind of want to close things off, Daniel, because you've been a fascinating study on entrepreneurship. But, just sort of some final steps in terms of what do you find works best for building your business, your brand in the digital space? What can people do out there?
I'm a big believer in this Google research that's called 0 Moments of Truth. And 0 Moments of Truth basically says what we were talking about before. It says that people need time to know you, like you, and trust you, and that what they need is 11 interactions based on the Google research. And what that means is they need to watch a video about you. They need to read a podcast, listen to a podcast, or read a blog. They need to read a book. They need to subscribe to a Twitter feed and be your friend on LinkedIn and Facebook. And if they can interact with you about 11 times, then it really triggers that know you, like you, and trust you pre-sold feeling or pre-warmed up feeling. So when it comes to the digital space, look, I'm a big believer in sales and having great sales conversations, and often those happen face-to-face or over the phone. But I'm a big believer that you shouldn't be having those conversations with people who don't know you, like you, and trust you. You should only go and invest your time and energy in having a sales conversation with someone who knows you, likes you, and trusts you. And I really think that the digital space is just that space where you can, at scale, build relationships where people know you, like you, and trust you. But I believe that, one of the key things that the digital environment should do is or a key question that I like people to be able to answer is, I say to people, if I sat down so the question I ask people is, I say, if I sat down in the morning and I said, I'm going to dedicate today to learning more about your business and learning more about who you are and what you do, could I spend all day watching stuff, reading stuff, listening to stuff, and interacting with you? Or would I run out of stuff pretty quickly? Now, most businesses, they say, oh, I've got 1 or 2 videos, I've got 1 or 2 blogs, I got 3 or 4 other things, which would take probably an hour or 2. And I really, for someone's digital footprint, I want them to have like days of stuff that's out there that they've produced online, so that if someone wants to content gorge, if someone wants to research, for a day, they can do it. And I'm a really big believer that people should use digital to help build relationships where people know them, like them, and trust them, and can access all that level of content.
Oh, that's cool. And I'll bring some popcorn too. So while you're watching what I do.
I'm not saying people will do it, but
oh, okay. Bring some snacks and some drinks, and we'll be okay.
Exactly, and we'll geek out and 0 moment of truth each other.
Yeah, 0 moment of truth each other. Oh, that sounds like a good game. Fascinating, Daniel. I really appreciate your time. And how can people find you online? Or do you want
there's
them
3
to?
books:
Are
Key
you
Person
living?
of Influence, Entrepreneur Revolution, oversubscribed. We run events all over the world: Sydney, Brisbane, Melbourne, Singapore, London. They can follow me on Twitter at Daniel Priestley. and they can read our blog, keypersonofinfluence.com. One of the cool things that a lot of people like to do, in fact, 17,728 people as of yesterday like to do, is to go online and fill in our influence scorecard. It's a set of 40 yes or no questions that allow people to get a score as to what they're doing right when it comes to influence in a business context and what they might need to improve when it comes to influence in a business context. So we have this scorecard. It produces a 33-page report based upon how you scored. So it's cool. Takes 7 or 8 minutes, and then you get the report, and you can read that in your own time. So a lot of people love to take that.
Cool. And what's the URL again?
You go to keypersonofinfluence.com/scorecard.
Okay.
Or if you go to keypersonofinfluence.com, there's links on the page.
Yeah, no, that's okay. We'll have all the links and all the sort of contact points for you as well, Daniel, on the web address, thedigitaldelusion.com/podcast. So everybody will be able to find them there. So cool. I really want to thank you again, Daniel, for your insight and your intrigue and your just great intelligence about what's going on with entrepreneurship. So congratulations on your journey, and looking forward to talking in the future.
Excellent. Thanks, Doyle. Thanks
Daniel.
So much for having me on the podcast.
Take care. Thank you very much for listening to Breaking Digital, the podcast for smart entrepreneurs wanting to become true digital leaders in their industry and to own online. If you have any comments on the program, please feel free to connect on Twitter @DoyleBuehler with the hashtag #OwnOnline. I would really appreciate it if you could share this podcast with your network, as I'm sure they will get some value from it for building their successful business online as well. You can find the resources that we talked about, as well as the transcript and full podcast for download on thedigitaldelusion.com/podcast or on iTunes or on SoundCloud. I'm Doyle Buehler, and I will see you online.
Thank you for listening to Breaking Digital with Doyle Buehler. While he goes and makes a sandwich, you can find all of the notes, links, and details on this podcast by visiting thedigitaldelusion.com/podcast. Go on and click that now. www.thedigitaldelusion.com/podcast. I'll definitely click that. If you'd like a free copy of the book, The Digital Delusion, How to Overcome the Misguidance and Misinformation Online, just send an email to doyle@thedigitaldelusion.com. See you online.